welcome to the Deck Forge, where I craft commander decks. Today, we're looking at Sephiroth, Fabled Soldier, a 3/3 for 3 with whenever it enters or attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, draw a card. Whenever another creature dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. If this is the 4th time this ability has resolved, transform Sephiroth. On his backside, he is a 5/5 flyer that says, as this creature transforms, you get an emblem with whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. And whenever it attacks, you may sacrifice any number of creatures and draw that many cards. My first thought when seeing Sephiroth was, oh my god, it makes a Blood Artist emblem. I wonder how many of these I can make in mono black. The answer to this is quite a few, but we'll need to lean on some artifacts to help us. First, Stranic Resonator, a 2-mana artifact with pay 2, tap, copy target triggered ability you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Not only does this allow us to use any extra mana to copy dice triggers, but also the transform trigger to make an emblem. Then there's Roaming Throne, a 4-mana artifact creature with, as it enters, choose a creature type. It is the chosen type in addition to its other types, and if a triggered ability of another creature you control of the chosen type triggers, it triggers an additional time. Whew, that's a mouthful. This might not make it onto my final list as it's quite a narrow ability and doesn't double up the triggers of anything but Sephiroth. Then there's Conjurer's Closet, a 5-mana artifact with, at the beginning of your end step, you may exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under your control. This will allow us to flicker Sephiroth after we have transformed him to return him to his front side. The Masamune was an easy include for me. It's a legendary artifact equipment with, as long as equipped creature is attacking, it has first strike and must be blocked if able, but more importantly, equipped creature has, if a creature dying causes a triggered ability of this creature or an emblem you own to trigger, it triggers an additional time. I love how on theme this is. It's still quite narrow, literally only working with Sephiroth, but that's the entire idea of the deck, to get as much out of the commander as possible. Now that's all great in Magical Christmas Land, but just having Blood Artists in the command zone should be good enough to build an efficient Aristocrats deck around. So let's go over some of the recurring creatures we've added to our list. The most infamous of these is Gravecrawler. A 1/1 for 1 with, you may play this from your graveyard as long as you control a zombie. Having cheap creatures which we can play or return from the graveyard will keep us pinging our opponents all game. Bloodghast is a 2/1 with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may return Bloodghast from your graveyard to the battlefield. This one is less reliable in our deck, but still will power out our Aristocrats game plan. Reassembling Skeleton is another 1/1 we can play from the graveyard, but this time for 2 mana. And finally, Cult Conscripts has the same ability as Reassembling Skeleton, but is only active if a non-skeleton has died under our control. These are our engine pieces, the bodies that never stay dead. That's some of the reoccurring skellies and zombies. Now let's look at some of the ways we can make sacrifice fodder in other ways. One of my favourites is Jadar, Ghoul-Caller of Nephalia. He says, at the beginning of your end step, if you control no creature with Decayed, create a 2/2 zombie with Decayed. Perfect. Something to sack every turn, which will be replaced every turn. Next, there's Orcish Bowmasters, a much maligned card for its crazily pushed abilities. So, when it enters, you make an army, you ping someone for 1, then any time an opponent would draw a card except the first one in their draw step, you amass again and you ping again. Hopefully you can make use of the army by sacrificing it before someone draws any more cards, as this is where the card really shines. Then we have Orpheomancer, 2/2 for 3, which makes a snake at the beginning of every upkeep. Meaning, you'll have 3 snakes to sacrifice on all of your turns. Very strong when you consider swinging with Sephiroth on his backside. Think of all the cards you can draw. Endrixar is another creature which can make tons of sack fodder. He says, when you cast a creature spell, create X, 1/1 Thrall creature tokens, where X is the spell's mana value. You might have to sacrifice him if you cast anything too big, but with all of the ways for us to recur creatures from the graveyard, it won't be too long before he's back in action, making thralls for us to throw into the grave for some juicy value. So, we have loads of things to sacrifice, and with Sephiroth only able to sack 1 a turn on his front side, how else might we trigger our die's effects? Let's look at some of the other ways to sacrifice our creatures. Two of the best are Ashnod's Altar and Phyrexian Altar. Both allow you to sacrifice creatures to create mana, and in the case of Phyrexian Altar, we'll be able to cast Gravecrawler from the graveyard over and over again, leading to a generally underwhelming and frowned upon win, but hey, that's 2 cards out of 99 which might just appear in the same game. Also bear in mind you'll need another zombie to activate Gravecrawler's ability, so call it 3 cards. I'm running no tutors in this deck because I generally find them to take some of the fun out of the decks I build, as you end up winning the same way every time. Feel free to add some to yours if you're so inclined. Also, I've avoided putting in effects like Grave Pact. They have the ability to suck the fun out of games as well. These would definitely be amazing includes, but I'd rather sit in the corner mass murdering zombies like some sadistic Dr. Frankenstein than inflict the horror of Grave Pact on my friends. Sorry, let's get back on track. Carrion Feeder, Viscera Seer, Yahenni are all sacrifice outlets on a body, which each have different abilities for sacking, but that's not what we're here for. Just being able to sacrifice an unlimited amount of times is what we need. Now then, other than Sephiroth, what is good when things die, I hear you ask? Well, what about the aforementioned Blood Artist? Why not double up on the Drain? This seems like an easy include. Similarly, Marionette Apprentice, which will ping each opponent for 1 every time something of ours dies, or we sacrifice an artifact, which we'll touch on in a bit with one of our other sacrifice payoffs. There's another one from Tarkir which works really well here too, Venerated Stormsinger. He has Mobilize, which will generate more tokens to sacrifice if you're able to swing his little 3/3 body at someone. Also, whenever this or another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 and you gain 1. Pitiless Plunderer is the card I was referring to when I spoke about sacrificing artifacts. Whenever another creature you control dies, he makes a treasure token, which will help power out all of our strategies, as well as maybe cause some damage from Marionette Apprentice. Also notice, this is not restricted to non-token creatures either, so all of the crappy tokens we don't care about now make us tons of mana. Talking about tons of mana, as we're in mono black, we have access to one of the most busted land combos in the game, Cabal Coffers and Urbok, Tomb of Yawgmoth. Add in a Cryptcast and we'll be making so much mana we won't know what to do with it. Often, aristocrat decks like this one have an unholy trifecta of pieces which combine for us to win the game. So we have things which come back from the graveyard for cheap, things which make little dudes for us to sacrifice, and things which have great effects when our things die. With all of those in place, we'll be sure to end the game on top, but if any of the small but effective pieces are removed, the whole game plan can quickly unravel. The next suite of cards I want to go over then is our recursion. Best of these is Phyrexian Reclamation, a 2-mana enchantment which allows us to pay 2 life and 2 mana to return a creature from our graveyard to our hand. We can activate this as many times as we want. Another permanent which allows us to do this is Vat of Rebirth. This one's less effective, but still will bring back things you need most in a pinch. It says, when an artifact or creature is put into a graveyard, put an oil counter on it. Then you can remove 4 oil counters from it, tap it, and return a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. As well as these two, we have a few one-time reanimation effects. First, Animate Dead, which has awkward text, but essentially returns a creature from your graveyard that it then attaches it to and reduces its power by 1. Then, Dread Return, which is a 4-mana reanimation effect with flashback cost of sacrificing 3 creatures. Not too shabby considering we want to make a load of creatures to sacrifice. Then, there's Victimize, which is the cost of sacrificing a creature will allow you to reanimate 2 creatures from your graveyard. Then, finally, if the game goes long and most of our pieces are in the graveyard, we have Agadeem's Awakening and Living Death. Agadeem's Awakening is a great MDFC from the original cycle, which lets you reanimate any number of creatures with different mana costs up to however much mana you put into it. And Living Death makes everyone sacrifice all of their creatures and replace them with all the creatures in their graveyard. A word of warning on this one. Sometimes our graveyard won't be as well stocked as our opponents, so maybe wait until you have a way to exile their graveyard first before reanimating everyone's stuff. That's a good look at all of the pillars of an Aristocrats deck, but I would be remiss if I didn't point out that cards like Fleshbag Marauder and Plaguecrafter will allow you to flip Sephiroth in one spell if all of your opponents have a creature out. This will really speed up the accumulation of Blood Artist emblems. Thank you for watching. I've linked my deck list in the description below. Feel free to take a look. I hope you've enjoyed my look at Sephiroth, Fabled Soldier. Think I missed some spicy synergy? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out the full deck list below. Happy crafting. See you in the next one.